Welcome to another edition of How I Would Book It, WCW 1998. We are here for another edition of another episode of Monday Nitro. And for this week, we kick it off with a video package. Yes, the screen says hyping Randy versus Bret Hart, but it's really just a highlight package of all the events that happened last week on Nitro, from Bret Hart showing up to Randy Savage and Tully Blanchard's in-ring altercation to begin the show, and and us finding out that Randy will be in a NWO gauntlet where if he beats all three members of the New World Order. Last week we saw him against NWO Sting. This week it's Bryan Adams. If he beats Bryan Adams and then proceeds to defeat Hulk Hogan next week on Nitro, he will challenge Sting for the WCW World Heavyweight title this month at Spring Stampede. And Bret Hart, the fact that Bret Hart disappeared for almost 3 weeks after quitting WCW, but showed up last week in somewhere in the East. I forget where we were. I think we were in New York, but I don't remember. But he showed up on the broadcast last week in the crowd as a member of the audience. All that and more happened last week, and now we move to our broadcast team, Bobby Heenan, Mike Today, and Tony Schiavone, who discuss what happened last week involving Hollywood Hogan. And well, Hollywood Hogan had has to do with Sting, Randy Savage, and the fact that if Savage beats Bryan Adams, to reiterate it, if Savage beats Bryan Adams tonight, he will go one-on-one with Hollywood Hogan next week on Nitro, where if Randy wins, he gets a shot at Sting at Spring Stampede. And then we move over to Sting also, who Sting basically did a shoot on Tully Blanchard and Eric Bischoff because of the lack of competition that Sting has had since he won the world title back at Starrcade, and the lack of just investment into the world champion that WCW has shown to Sting. And also they close with the fact that Bret Hart surprised the wrestling world, showing up, because you know Tony Schiavone always likes to say, I forget what his expression was, but it's this is a landmark night in the industry or something like that. And he, always tries to put over the fact everything of being a big deal, but this he would actually put over as a really big deal because Bret Hart quit. Bret Hart quit WCW. He was done. He was done. And he showed up at the show as a fan last week, and now Tony ends it questioning, if we don't see Hitman tonight, when will the next time be that we see Bret Hart on Nitro? And now we move to, I believe, the first match of the night, but I could be wrong. The first match of the night with Chris Adams against Chris Benoit. And you want me to tell you why this happened? Because something happened about a month ago backstage, and Chris Adams got suspended. I felt bad that I suspended him because he was so accepting of the punishment that I felt it necessary to give him a television title shot. But the television reason, Benoit's a fighting champion. Benoit hasn't defended the title in a while, so I figure that why not give him a title defense against a random challenger. Now we move to the next segment with Lex Luger. Now you might wonder, why is Lex Luger cutting a promo? Well, the fact of the matter is, this is Luger's promo. Luger walks out. No Gene Okerlund. No notice from the announcers. Nothing. They just question to each other. Lex Luger, I wonder what he wants. Luger gets in the ring and he says, Buff Bagwell is a coward. The NWO are full of cowards. When you want to step in the ring against them, they are nowhere to be found. I know this because from day one, I have been on the war front fighting against the NWO for WCW. And now I am against Buff Bagwell because he thinks he's capable of taking down a total package. Buff, I got a message for you, and that is, better men than you have tried to take me down. And all have failed. But you aren't the man to take me down because you are not man enough to face me one-on-one, face to face. But I know somebody who is. And that is Scott Norton. So Scott Norton, please, if you will. But just as he tries to, just as he calls out Scott Norton, Norton ascends from backstage, and Bryan Adams jumps in the ring and attacks Lex Luger from behind, blindsiding him, and then Scott Norton runs down into the ring and joins in the attack. This surprises the announcers because it seemed like Lex believed that Norton has some good in him, and he's not just a rough, tough, I want to say redneck, but I don't know. I really don't know where Scott Norton is from, but I do know Scott Norton is by far one of the toughest men in WCW, never to show it. But yeah, this happened. And now we move to the next. This is I totally forgot I had a segment based on this, but I covered this already. Following where I said that the announcers were seemingly surprised that Lex Luger believed that Scott Norton had a good side, and they think that no NWO member has a good side, and that every member of the NWO is a coward and isn't capable of having a real competitive match. And now we move to the next match, which is Hot Rod Roddy Piper against Alex Wright. If you guessed that the reason why Roddy Piper is here to discuss what happened at the paper at Uncensored between him and Ric Flair, and then what happened next week, that next day with him and Ric Flair on Nitro last week, then you are right. If you don't know what I'm saying, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back, watch part 14. I've done so many parts that I lose track. Part 14, when Flair and Piper had the in-ring altercation, and what happened last week between him and Flair, near the end of the altercation. But after the match, after he wins, Roddy Piper does not call out Ric Flair. Roddy Piper calls out the man who caused all this, and that man is Sid Vicious. But Sid Vicious doesn't respond. But Roddy continues and says, "Sid, you caused all this. You started it back at Starrcade when you attacked Flair. You escalated it when you took out Arn. You escalated it when you tried to take me out. But now you're trying, and now you are causing me and Flair to not join together against you and your buddy Greg Valentine. Fact is, Sid, you need to get your ass out here, 'cause I want to kick it. But Sid does not answer the call. Arn Anderson does. Arn Anderson answers the call because Arn Anderson comes out and says he has something to tell Hot Rod. And that is, Hot Rod, and that is something like this. Hot Rod, you are right. You are right that they escalated it. Whether it was Sid, whether it was Sid and Greg Valentine, whether it was just Greg Valentine, it doesn't matter. But either way, they escalated it when they brought you and me into it. They escalated it when they tried to take out Flair's friends. But truth is, you escalated it when you tried to get involved in Rick's match at Uncensored. When you couldn't wait your turn to get your hands on Sid Vicious because you wanted to get your revenge just like Flair did and still does. And I guarantee, because I've known you for long enough, Roddy, to know that you still want your revenge, but you can't get it just yet. Because you know Flair wants Sid again. Arn, you're right. You're right that I want to get Sid in the ring one-on-one, and I don't want to have to wait till Flair gets his taste. Because you know something, Arn? Ric Flair may be one of the best ever, but he's made a lot of enemies in his career, and there ain't no hiding from that. And you know what, Double A? Sid is one of those enemies. Look, okay, I just realized that the recording was paused, and I honestly don't know when the recording was paused, so I don't really know where you guys left off, or where you guys last remember hearing me talk. So, let me just say that in reality, Jimmy Hart comes out following his team's match. He gets in the ring. And cuts a promo shooting on the lack of depth in the WCW Tag Team division, saying it seems like it's went from people being proud of being in tag teams to forgetting the benefit of being in a tag team and what it could do for your career. Oh shit. I'm sorry, I totally forgot I was recording. I was sending a text. Whoops. Let's continue with the show. I totally apologize. I totally apologize. I totally forgot that I was recording. See what happens when you pause the recording? you forget it was happening. You forget when you're actually recording again. Okay, so now we move to the next segment, which is Scott Steiner and Rick Steiner backstage talking, and Scott is acting somewhat heelish, possibly hinting at a heel turn. He's acting somewhat heelish to his brother. Some could think that he's acting this way because of what happened at Uncensored 2 weeks ago when Scott and Rick lost the tag titles to the Harlem Heat. But now we move to the announced position where Mike, Tony, and Bobby talk about the main event tonight, Scott Steiner against Sting. And they sing the praises of what both men have been able to do this year and over their careers. Sting becoming one of the biggest stars in WCW, and Scott Steiner becoming one of the most prominent tag team wrestlers in the history of pro wrestling. And they collide tonight in the main event here on Nitro. And then we move to the next match before the main event, the semi-main, I guess you could call it the semi-main, where Kevin Nash locks horns with Conan right in the middle of the ring, and Big Kev wins again against K-Dog one-on-one. And now we move to the next segment, which the segment prior to this, but for some reason the game skipped it, is Kevin Nash taunting, getting on the mic and talking about Hollywood Hogan, and he says something to the effect of, "Hollywood Hogan, I mean, it seems like everybody is getting on this microphone and speaking their minds in the last 2 weeks, so I figure why not why don't I do the same thing?" And instead of me trying to navigate through a Kevin Nash promo, I would say this, that Nash would be able to say how he truly feels about Hulk Hogan on camera, which would bring out Eric Bischoff, and all Eric Bischoff would say is one thing: "Kevin, don't forget that just as quick as you're here, as you are being here, you could be just like your buddy Scott Hall on the unemployment line begging for a job up north. Don't push it." I'm going to take advantage of this segment and turn Kevin Nash into a babyface, because he was going to turn eventually anyway, so I figured why not. Now we move to the next segment, which is just really getting DDP a win back following his loss last week to Hollywood Hogan. And this week he's versing Mortis one-on-one, defending his United States title once again, because I feel like DDP hasn't defended it enough recently, so putting him in a random title match against Mortis not only gives him an opportunity to defend the title, it gives him more incentive to win, and it also is something that WCW actually did, because you can't tell me that they actually put everybody in matches that they build up. So in more ways than one, I am kind of running over on this, I am pretty sure, because how I record, I don't have a timestamp, so I don't know how long the video is running, but the video is almost over, so let's just leave it at that. DDP gets on the microphone following his match against Mortis, and taunts Raven, saying that he's defeated every single person, every single member in the flock, and now is laying out the challenge to Raven for Spring Stampede in 2 weeks on pay-per-view, and he will put the United States title on the line. And DDP says, I will put this title on the line if it means getting you in this ring, and getting my hands on you. And he leaves it at that. And now we move to the next segment, which will be quick. Randy against Bryan Adams in the second part of the NWO Gauntlet, with Randy Savage coming out the victor against Bryan Adams, which means one thing and one thing only, and that is that Randy Savage will be up against Hollywood Hulk Hogan next week on Nitro for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. And this is basically Tully Blanchard coming out following the match, making sure Randy knows about that, realizes that he's gotten the 2 wins, but he still needs to beat Hogan next week on Nitro to get the world title shot against Sting at Spring Stampede. And speaking of Sting, the main event, which I thought was going to get a lot better than a 64, which damages the show, let me just say that. Sting against Scott Steiner, which I thought would have gotten in the 70s, but I guess not so much. Let's see if I can see why. Segment got well booked, higher experience, I feel his feel, low locker room morale, and penalized for life. So that's all that happened. The small things affected it, and the small things became big things, and screwed me out of having a solid main event. So yeah. But the reason why this main event happened is twofold, and here's the second fold. Scott Steiner, post-match, Sting offers to shake the hand of Scott Steiner after a solid match, but Steiner refuses and walks off. You wonder what's going through the mind of Scott Steiner after acting the way he did earlier in the broadcast with his brother, and just acting the way he did now with Sting. Now, as you can tell, a 68 final rating. We gained in popularity, but we also lost, so it's an average show. As you can see at the beginning of the, on the pre-show, stuff happened. Don't pay attention to that. It's just the pre-show. He's not doing anything. He'll probably be back. Whatever. But fact of the matter is, hopefully this isn't that bad. This is a lot better than we used to, that we did get, where we lose, and a lot more than where we lose and a lot more than we gain. But now it's close to being even and close to even gaining. But always next week to straighten this out, fix it, and get on the right track, because we still have May, June, July, August, and September. We still have till September Fall Brawl to straighten this out. Will it happen? I'm starting to think not, but we can always find. But we still have time to figure it out. I apologize for the missteps this video, but it happens. And I will see you next time. I will see you next time for more content just like this. Don't forget, only can be found right here, Wrestling Express. Peace.